family, I bow to the love that is absolutely in you. That's right. There's a light that's inside of you, and it's not your fault if you grew up feeling dissociated or disconnected from your light. So let's talk a little bit just so we can understand where we're moving with this video. Let's talk about what happened to so many of us who grew up in dysfunctional homes. Um, if you grew up in a home where you were not allowed to talk about your feelings, it is absolutely impossible for you to feel, I think it's impossible, to feel connected to the self. Because we associate psychologically the self with our emotions. And so if as a child you were taught that emotions were unnecessary or they were irrelevant, if you were shamed when you cried, if you were called selfish when you wanted something, if when you gave your opinion you were criticized and mocked and humiliated, if when you tried to explain yourself, you got the sense that what you had to say was unimportant. If you're a young man and you grew up and your father never played ball with you, if he never spent time with you, if he never, palled around with you, if he didn't roughhouse with you, if he didn't take you out, to watch a football game once in a while, if he didn't do the kinds of things that you needed him to do as a young man, then that is going to affect how you see yourself. Because if daddy can't spend time with me, that must mean that there's something wrong with me. This is the way children interpret their lack from their parents. It's not our fault, but the way our parents treat us sends us a message. So it's called non-verbal communication. And we're constantly picking up on our parents' non-verbal communication. If you're a female, I'm a female, obviously, at least I think so. I think it's obvious. Anyway, I digress. If you're a young woman and you grew up with a mom who distanced herself from you. I had no relationship with my mom growing up. I mean, she was there in the house cooking and cleaning, and she walked us to school and she did our laundry, but there was no bond between me and my mom. We never did the things that I thought every other little girl did with her mom. I had this idea that every other little girl but me in the whole universe was shopping with their mom. I had this idea that every other little girl in the world had a mom that brushed her hair nicely or spent time talking to her about growing up, about nail polish, about boys, about whatever. It boggles my mind when I think back to my childhood and I realize I never had a conversation with my mom. I never had a heart-to-heart conversation with my mother. And I think about how many conversations I have with my own children today. And I realize how much lack there was. But you see, that lack of bonding sent a message to me. It said to me that I'm not worthy of my mother's attention. And I felt that on a soul level. And so when we grow up in homes where our emotions, who we are psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, who we are on the inside, when we presume or we feel or we perceive that what is happening to us on the inside is unacceptable by others on the outside, we begin to experience shame. And that shame follows us throughout our life. And so when we start dating, we're ashamed of telling this person what we really think. We're so afraid that this person is going to abandon us. We're so afraid that this person is going to see something in us that they find unworthy and they are going to leave us. And this all goes back to what we experienced in childhood. And that, dear ones, is simply not our fault. So what we have to recognize is that deep within the subconscious mind is our childhood programming. Remember, the subconscious mind is not subjective. It's not objective. It never ever questions what is being downloaded into it. So when you're a child, imagine your mind is like a garden and mommy and daddy and all the authorities in your life, uncles and your aunts and school and authorities and what you see on television, all of these things are like seeds that are getting planted into this very virgin, fertile, amazing soil that with hardly any attention whatsoever, all these seeds are going to blossom and become or bear the fruits of what's been sowed. We are not responsible for what has been sowed while we're children. We're not. We are powerless. We are literally hostages to our families. They are responsible for us. We cannot take care of ourselves. If we grew up in chaotic homes, we're stuck. We are prisoners. And many of us have had to learn how to live in hostile environments by living through survival. We learn survival skills. And one of the survival skills so many of us have learned just to keep ourselves safe is to dissociate. We dissociate from how we feel because it's not safe to feel. We've got to be hyper vigilant and watch what mommy and daddy are doing. And in all those moments where we're watching what mommy and daddy are doing, we're being taken away from the self. We're not attached to the self. We're not experiencing our trauma. We're avoiding a future trauma when we're being hypervigilant and making sure that mommy's over there and she's happy and daddy's over there and he's not drinking or whatever. It doesn't really matter. The fact is, if you grew up in a home where you didn't feel safe, you had to dissociate from your true self. And so now, if you're walking around on planet Earth confused about who the hell you are, know that that's appropriate for your situation. You're not crazy, dear one. You're not crazy. It's not you. It's your programming. So what I want to do today is I want to teach you something that I learned to teach myself. That's what I'm all about. I'm all about helping those of you out there who have suffered long enough below the veil of consciousness, who were living out these what I call holograms of childhood and did not know that you didn't have to live that way. And so let's say you've happened upon my channel or someone else's channel. There are wonderful teachers out there on YouTube, wonderful authors out there, all over the place, wonderful motivational speakers. But let's just say for whatever reason, you're on this channel and bells and whistles are going off. You're starting to wake up. Like, what is she talking about? It's not me, it's my programming. What does that mean? What I mean is that you have been taught to believe certain things. And as children, we don't challenge the beliefs that have been downloaded into our mind. So if I believe that I'm not worthy because my mother spends no time with me, I don't know, first of all, that that's not true. It might be true that she's not spending time with me, but it's not true that I'm not worthy. It might be true that she even has issues with how she feels about me, but I was her kid. I was her child. I'm not responsible for the fact that she had problems with her mother. She might even see me as unworthy. She might even think that I'm the biggest little bitch that she could ever have given birth to. And I'm sure there were days that she thought that, but that doesn't mean it's true. So we have these beliefs that sort of just fester and fester and fester and fester our whole life. And what we do as adults, we run from that fear inside our own mind. We keep running and running and running and running and running. Sometimes we develop eating disorders in an attempt to run away from that fear that we're not good enough. Or we drink to run away from that fear that we're not good enough. Or we become love addicts. And through these relationships after relationships, we are running away from the fear that maybe we're not good enough. We're so afraid to tap into that feeling of not being good enough because there's a belief that has us believing that we really are unworthy. And who the hell wants to believe and feel that we're unworthy? Who wants to do that? Nobody. And so the brain keeps us running and running and running and running and running away from that fear. And what we need to do, dear ones, is to face that fear. And we need to challenge the beliefs that are sabotaging our ability to be happy today. And this is what I had to learn to do. And I think the reason I'm so damn good at it is because I had to figure it out on my own, really. I mean, I was desperate. When I discovered that I was codependent, it was like, okay, now what? There were so many books out there that was pointing me in the direction, yep, codependent, yep, people pleaser, yep. But there was no book out there at the time when I started to wake up that taught me what to do about being freaking codependent. I wanted to stop being codependent. And I want to teach you some of the things. And today I'm going to teach you one of the tools that I use that I think is very, very useful. So once you understand that this is all about programming, right? What goes in must come out. As it is below, so shall it be above. This is what you have to understand. However, when you were a baby, you had this blank slate of a mind, pretty much. Although your genes could have been affected by the trauma of your family, absolutely. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to be talking about the mind, right? So imagine being born. Now, everything that happens to you on outside of you is going to affect the brain. is going to affect your programming, everything. And this speaks to epigenetics, where it's proven, Bruce Lipton has proven, Dr. Bruce Lipton is a genius, by the way. He has proven that what happens outside of a cell affects the inside of the cell. And the same thing happens with us as human beings. We are a cell. Think of yourself as a cell, and think of your home as the environment that your cell had to live in. And understand that everything that happened in your environment affected you, affected the cell that you were. And that's not your fault. So now, imagine that everything that happened to you is basically like a computer program that has been microchipped into your mind. Now, if you followed me that far, now you can understand the purpose of reprogramming what has been downloaded. So I know I'm very wordy. I tend to be very wordy, and I'm sorry, but I'm getting to the point. Just stick with me, dear ones. Stick with me. I'm going to teach you one of the ways in which you can reprogram your mind. And so what you have to do is, if you wanted to reprogram a computer, right? Let's say there was something wrong with your computer. There's something wrong with one of the programs. You would first have to figure out what was wrong. You'd first have to identify the program that was running that was faulty. So all these thoughts that are going through your head that exist on a loop, you have to begin catching them. So imagine you have a butterfly net. And from this day forward, you're going to start catching those thoughts in your head, catching them. Don't let them just race through your head like thoughts tend to race. Catch them. So imagine that you have the ability to catch a thought in this butterfly net. And then what I want you to do is I want you to get your notebook. I write all the time. So get a notebook, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take the thoughts that are in this butterfly net and you're going to start writing them out. You need to know what these thoughts are. You need to know what has been downloaded into your mind. So let's say you fear that you're never going to find true love. So we don't realize like how many times a day that thought might be racing. I'm never going to find never going to find anybody, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too gray, whatever. So you have to start catching those dysfunctional, self-sabotaging, negative loops of thought. You have to catch them before you can reprogram it. So let's, for argument's sake, let's say that's the thought that's going through your head. I'm never going to find true love. So catch it. Now you caught it. Now what you do is you take your notebook and you write out in your notebook, in your journal, I am never going to find true love. Now, dear ones, that's not true. Now this is the thing. As a man thinks, so is he. Now, you could walk around for the rest of your life with the idea that you're never going to find true love. And guess what? You will never find true love. But here's the thing, not because you couldn't, but because you didn't believe you could. As a man thinks, so is he. Your beliefs are you creating your reality as you go. And you can check out the work of another fabulous doctor named Dr. Robert Lanza, Lanza. He is proving that we are creating our reality as we go. What you think and the images that you keep in your eye, in your third eye, become projected on the screen that we call the universe. So that means I have to teach you, or you have to teach yourself, whatever, it has to happen. You have to learn how to change what's going on in here so you can change what's going on out here. But guess what? You can't change what's going on in here until you gain some control over what's going on in here. So that's why I'm trying to teach you to objectify these scary thoughts. So let's say we'll play with that thought again. I'm never going to find true love. So you take that thought, you write it down, I am never going to find true love. And then what you do is you reframe that thought. You look at it, you objectify it. You ask yourself, is it true that I'll never find true love? Only if you say so. Is it possible that you figure this out and begin changing the images that are in your mind, and you start believing and understanding that people fall in love when they're 60, people fall in love when they're 70. My grandmother, I believe, found the love of her life at 82. At 82. I really do believe that. My grandfather, my dad's dad, passed away, and many years later, when she began to live in an assisted living place, he found her, this amazing man. And at 82 years old, it was the cutest thing in the world to see my grandmother happy and in love. I mean, he didn't even want her to wear a dress because he was worried that the other guys in the place were going to look at her. I mean, it was adorable. So no, dear one, you're never too old to fall in love. But remember, as a man thinks, so is he. So you have to challenge that thought. So one of the things that you could do is put the thought down on a piece of paper, and on the other side of that paper, what you're going to do is you're going to write a thought that challenges that belief. It's not true. It doesn't have to be true. It's only true if you say it's true. Then what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, well, what do I really want? Define what you want. The subconscious mind needs a new goal. The subconscious mind, up until this point in time or up until you wake up, has only been playing with the tools that are in the shed. So the more tools that we put in your shed, the more ideas, the more new beliefs that we program into your mind, the better your life experience is going to be. So decide what you really want. Do you want to fall in love? Do you want to find true happiness? Do you want to find someone who is your equal, that is equally yoked to you? Do you want to find someone that is fun-loving, that is easy to talk to, that understands where you're coming from, that has the ability to have empathy for you, who is a self-loving human being themselves, maybe who eats right, maybe who likes to exercise, maybe who likes to volunteer and do charity work? Whatever, you have a right to define what your desired relationship would and should look like. But if you don't start putting these new ideas into your mind, your subconscious mind has nothing to shoot for. And then what will happen is you will be recycling all this old data, and all this stuff from the past will keep showing up. Not because it has to, but because you haven't learned to captain your ship. You haven't learned to create the thoughts in your head that you want to experience in your future life experience. So this is called reframing, and this is called reprogramming. At least this is what I call it. You can call it whatever you like. So dear ones, this is all about figuring out what the problem is, identifying a belief that's running around in the head, challenging that belief, and then recreating a new belief by figuring out what it is you really, really want. And that becomes your new focus. If you do this often enough every day, if you really, really focus on catching all those negative thoughts and all those self-defeating thoughts with that butterfly net, and you are diligent about writing out these beliefs, and you are diligent about challenging those beliefs, and you are diligent about figuring out what it is you really, really want, I'm telling you, in a short amount of time, your life will begin to change. You have to change the inside before you can experience the change on the outside. Dear ones, it is my honor, truly my honor, to come into your heart, to come into your minds today, and to come into your lives today. I am the creator of the 12-week Breakthrough Coaching Program. The next class launches January 12th. The next class will launch sometime in June. If you're interested, you can check me out at www.lisaaromano.com. And I am also going to be hosting a live brunch in February in Long Island and a workshop. And I truly hope many of you will join me there. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can reach me at lisaaromano@gmail.com, and I will be happy to supply you with that information. Namaste, everybody. I bow to the love and the light that is absolutely in you. Bye for now. Family, I bow to the love that is absolutely in you. That's right. There's a light that's inside of you, and it's not your fault if you grew up feeling dissociated or disconnected from your light. So let's talk a little bit, just so we can understand where we're moving with this video. Let's talk about what happened to so many of us who grew up in dysfunctional homes. If you grew up in a home where you were not allowed to talk about your feelings, it is absolutely impossible for you to feel, I think it's impossible, to feel connected to the self. Because we associate psychologically the self with our emotions. And so if as a child you were taught that emotions were unnecessary or they were irrelevant, if you were shamed when you cried, if you were called selfish when you wanted something, If when you gave your opinion, you were criticized and mocked and humiliated. If when you tried to explain yourself, you got the sense that what you had to say was unimportant. If you're a young man and you grew up and your father never played ball with you, if he never spent time with you, if he never, palled around with you, if he didn't roughhouse with you, if he didn't take you out, to watch a football game once in a while, if he didn't do the kinds of things that you needed him to do as a young man, then that is going to affect how you see yourself. Because if daddy can't spend time with me, that must mean that there's something wrong with me. This is the way children interpret their lack from their parents. It's not our fault, but the way our parents treat us sends us a message. So it's called nonverbal